What is going on, YouTube fitness family? And on today's episode of why everybody fucking hates a science-based lifting community, we have a new study that shows that lifting to 100-degree leg press is more effective or just as effective as lifting to full ROM. And I'm gonna walk you through what I think about this study and what it tells us. So this study was performed, I saw it posted on Menno's channel. I don't have anything inherently against the guy. I think he's doing a great job of trying to find answers to what is the most optimal training methodology in terms of frequency, types of training, how deep we should be going. So this test specifically tested, which is laughable, 23 individuals, that's it, over 8 weeks. Great. We can get a good grasp on how much muscular gain we can get in 8 weeks for with train lifters. So I will give them that. Train lifters have at least 7 years. So we are using people that aren't like college students who have never lifted a weight in their life. And what we were regulating for was leg press, single leg, so that we didn't have disparity of, let's say, caloric intakes or genetic potential between two different individuals, because you'd have to have a humongous test group of, like, let's say 1,000 people to kind of obviously regulate that discrepancy of, let's say somebody has a better genetics or is eating more, things like that, that is hard to control. So they were using these individuals and testing either right leg or left leg. One was going to full ROM and the other was going to just 100 degrees. So essentially just below what you consider, in a squat like parallel. So let's just dig into the problems with this study. We already talked about the first two is just the amount of participants. It was very low and the duration is very low. So we're already I'm gonna probably toss this one out with the bathwater. The saying, the baby at the bathwater. I don't know where that came from. Why would you ever toss a baby out with bathwater? But I'm gonna toss this one out there with that. But I was like, you know what? Let me just give this a read. And I was like, you know what? They probably at least used the same weights, right? For full ROM or 100 degrees. Absolutely wrong. Like, they were using 150% plus of load for the 100-degree group as for the full ROM group. So it's like, this is an excuse for like ego lifting. It's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Testing a completely different weight. You're tossing so many different, changing so many different variables, and they kind of like justified it that we're like, they were trying to train to, like, complete failure on each leg. But there's also, like, with such a small group, like how much effort, as you guys all know, like if I came up to you and you thought you were at failure and I was like, hey, I'll give you $10,000 to hit 10 more reps. I guarantee you, like, most of you guys would be able to hit like at least 6 to 7 more reps, right? So I think that's a hard one. If you are not normalizing for the weight used, it's hard to say, okay, were they really pushing as close to failure, or like was full ROM just more fatiguing? So in that sense, like, by using different weights, you're basically proving your own point that full ROM is going to elicit a better result. If you can start to progressively overload full ROM and now use 150% of the weight, which is what I did personally. So I think that's what's caused so much leg growth for me. So let's use that example, right? I used to leg press with pretty shitty form. Phil, pop in the shitty leg press form from years ago with my legs were fucking sticklets. Then I started to just slowly over time increase my range of motion to where now it's like diabolically deep. But as I've done that, I've tried to get back to the weight that I was doing with the subpar form. So now I can do 10 plates on each side with my heels, or basically my I don't even know what angle that would be, but essentially my calves touching my hamstrings at the bottom of the rep before driving out. So now I'm using the same weight as I was doing, let's say, to 80-degree angle, so like this. Now I'm going all the way to, like, let's say 20-degree angle, and the amount of torque required to get myself from B, bottom of the rep, back to A now has increased exponentially. So that external force is that much greater. And now my joints are healthier than they've ever been, because we've proven, oh, you can actually improve your joint health by lifting in full ROM. And nobody talks about this. Like, that's the shitty thing about this. It's like always what's gonna build the most muscle? But like nobody ever talks about at what cost. So there's literally Brad Schoenfeld just posted a great article, go check it out, I'll post a link in the description, where it showed that by training in full ROM, you get the benefits of almost like sitting there in static stretching, but it's almost better because you've got that partner stretch. So for me, leg pressing with 8, 9, 10 plates on each side, that's an amount of stretch I would never be able to get by like holding my, quad behind me. Like that amount of stretch is only going to be elicited by the amount of weight that's on that leg press. Or if I'm doing a Bulgarian split squat with an elevated front foot, that stretch in my hip flexor, in my adductor, in my quads is only going to have that much response with the weight that's also providing that extra stimulus. So, oh man, this just makes me super mad, guys. Just like, I feel bad for the people that see this, and there's so many comments, like I'll read them right now. Like I wanna read the comments. All right, here we go. Top comment, Dr. Mike crying, throwing up right now with a strategically placed camera to record him throwing up. Like this is like, I feel bad because there's gonna be so many people that see this and they're like, look bro, I'm gonna lift, I'm only gonna take my dumbbell press to like half ROM and I'm gonna get more gains than you. It's like, it's an excuse to be a fucking pussy. I'm sorry. Like, that's what this is. To release a study like this is basically saying, train less hard. Like, use your ego more. Like, these are some of the smartest guys in the fitness space, and they're basically promoting ego lifting, which is maddening to me. So let's look at not only what induces the highest levels of mechanical tension, muscular hypertrophy, growth, stimulus, but let's also look at what are the downside risks to that outcome. For me, I look at the whole picture, and that's why I feel like my training is so effective in the sense of, okay, I'm not only just training to get as big as possible, which obviously is the end game of going to the gym, but I wanna feel good. I wanna feel like my body's performing well. And ever since I've started training in these lengthened positions, I've felt better, my joints have felt better. I can use less load and drive more external force like I was talking about. So while stretching inherently may or may not be directly hypertrophic, there's been a lot of studies that have proven that it does have hypertrophic benefits specifically. But what I like to tell people is like, okay, maybe if it's just marginal, but then there's also a humongous benefit to longevity, to joint health, to mobility. Why would you not then take those steps? We all know that you guys are not going home and spending 30 minutes mobilizing a night. Like, we just know it. I know it, you know it, you're full of shit if you say you're gonna do it. So what you should do is take your time that you have to put towards fitness, in this case in the gym, and use it to better yourself in not only building more muscle, but trying to prevent injury. The more weight you lift, I don't care who tells you differently, you're more likely to get hurt. The more load that you place and strain you place on the tissue and on the joint, there's gonna be more risk of injury. If you're lifting half the weight to more range of motion, you're not going to be as likely to get hurt. So people will be like, oh, you're gonna hurt yourself deep leg pressing like that. I'm like, bullshit. Throw fucking 10, 12, 15 plates on there with sticklet legs, and you tell me that you're not gonna get more likely to get hurt. Like, then if you use 3 plates, Phil, he's like my videographer is like a very avid power lifter. He has dropped his ego, come and leg press with me with like 3 plates on each side, and he's like, dude, this is insane. Like, the amount this has helped my squats, the amount this helped my joint health, and I don't feel like, Phil, do you feel like you're gonna get hurt like when you're doing like super deep leg press with me?
No, it just feels good.
So it's just stuff like this, like over time, it's just maddening to try to counterbalance because I've also been like very open-minded to change. For example, like I used to be a 12 to 18 rep guy, maybe closer to maybe 10 at the least. I've turned more into like a 6 to 10 rep guy since more of the research is coming out that like maybe that's the best way to elicit the best response with the least amount of fatigue. But within that, I'm still using really good range of motion. I'm still using really good tempo, and tempo not in the way that's gonna build me more muscle, but it's gonna keep me so much safer. If you're just tossing weight around, I always tell people, how many times have you seen somebody slow down their rep and their form get worse? Like it's just not a thing. If you're slowing down your tempo and you're trying to be more in tune with the way you're moving your body or the way you're moving the weight, you're going to have less injury risk. You're gonna probably drive more acute stimulus. So if I'm throwing weight around like this in a press, and then I'm like, oh, my chest isn't growing at all, but then I go like this, stretch, and then drive consciously through the chest, I'm obviously going to drive more acute stimulus in my chest, even if most of the growth is happening in that stretch and concentric phase. So yes, I'm not saying that if you slow down your negative, it's going to be directly hypertrophic, but if you can slow down your eccentric to improve your form, and then you can drive more consciously through the target muscle group with less risk of injury, yes, it is more hypertrophic indirectly. So that's why these things just drive me out of my fucking mind. But let's go into, I had a bunch of other notes about this. It's probably gonna make my blood boil. I couldn't believe it. When I read through and I saw that they had different weights, that just like drove me out of my mind. All right, sample size, we already touched on that. Short study duration, like I don't think 8 weeks is enough to substantively say there was like a tremendous amount of difference. Maybe if you run this trial for 6 months, and I know their excuse was, oh, you're never gonna get trained lifters to train single leg training only for more than, let's say, 8 weeks. And I don't know if there was allowance for other leg training outside of this, or this is the only thing they were allowed to do. I'll have to look into that. If they allow them to do other leg work outside, like that's where this just becomes like absolutely laughable. But I would assume with the level of scientists these people are that did the study, I would hope that is the case. So the next thing that I was noticing is that in the study when reading it, is they allowed the individuals in the full range of motion group to essentially let their heel come off at the bottom of the rep. And the major problem with that is that you are going to lose essentially the amount of force generated through the quad, because then you have imbalance, you've got the calf involved. So essentially you should not be working with individuals in a full ROM that cannot keep their heel connected, and you should have used some sort of heel elevated shoe, elliptic lifting shoe, or worked to that mobility. And that's what I always tell people. Like, I didn't go from a 90-degree range of motion leg press to a 20-degree range of motion leg press in a day or a week or even a month. It took me a year plus to get to that full range of motion. That's another way to progressively overload, because of that fact that the torque required to get from B to A increases so much, but within the confines of good form and good mobility. So if your ankle mobility is not there and your hip and glute mobility are not there, you're going to inherently have a drop off of force production in the target muscle group, because you're starting to lift the heel off, maybe your lower back is lifting off the pad. You are then inducing a small level of danger because the spine is now curved. There's a lot of things that you don't want to do when you're doing this type of movement, which those are the two things. Number one is definitely letting the lower back roll off the pad. Number two is letting the heel lift within reason, because you are going to get that force drop off. So the fact that there was allowance for the heel to come off is a huge oversight by the testing, by the people performing this test, and I think it will obviously and it did affect the results. The other thing is it was only measuring quads. I don't know about you, but when I'm doing a compound movement, I like to work more than one muscle group. Like I like to work my adductors, my glutes. I think it's a crazy idea to want to work multiple muscle groups with a compound exercise that's extremely taxing, but that's just me. I mean, if they had tested for glutes and adductors, I guarantee you that the width and the growth would probably be much more substantial, especially if the full ROM group was forced to keep heel planted. There'd be a lot more glute involvement, there would be a lot more adductors, and as we know, we want to be complete athletes. So if you want to just train your quads, you might as well do some quad extensions. So in conclusion, guys, I don't think you should use this as a end-all be-all to limit your range of motion, especially on your leg press. And if you are dumb enough to see a headline like this, or look at a fucking meme like this is somebody that's trying to affect the way you think by making you feel dumb, or making somebody feel dumb by the way that they do things, actually legitimately. So I think that you should be very careful when you see information like this, and I'm sure so many people shared this with me personally, and that's why I felt the need to respond, because I have been a huge proponent of full ROM. It's helped me, it's changed my life, it's changed the life of so many people that I've taught it to in multiple areas, not just for legs, but for back, for chest, for hamstrings. So there's pretty much almost any body part from a therapeutic perspective is gonna benefit, some more than others. But I think that that's the biggest thing that affected me is the almost weaponization of full ROM. Just to prove a point and using memes and making fun of it. But I'm here to make fun of you for training less hard, for wanting to put in less work to try to get maybe the same result, which isn't really the same result. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys on the next one.